This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to I'll Have Another Podcast with Lindsay Hine. I'm your host, Lindsay, and I'm so grateful you're here today. Today you're listening to episode 338, and if you are local to Indianapolis, I want to tell you about a 5K that's coming up down at the White River State Park. It is the Junior League of Indianapolis's Scarlet Run 5K, and it's being held to celebrate their centennial year. So the Junior League of Indianapolis is an organization of women committed to promoting volunteerism, developing women, and improving the community through the leadership of trained volunteers. And since 2000, the Junior League of Indianapolis has awarded nearly $5 million to local nonprofits. Proceeds from this run on October 3rd will allow the Junior League of Indianapolis to continue awarding grants for years to come. I have run so many races down at the White River State Park in Indianapolis, and it is such a beautiful, great experience. This race will no doubt be amazing. Register by going to jlindy.org, and you can use the code ANOTHER5, that's another with the number 5, to get $5 off your registration. So go to jlindy.org and use the code ANOTHER5 to get $5 off your registration. Now, if you want to sign up virtually and do the virtual 5K as well, you can do the same. Just go to jlindy.com and use the code ANOTHER5 for $5 off your registration. All right, so today's episode, we're talking with a mountain bike world champion, Sonya Looney. She is the world champion for the 24-hour mountain bike championships. She is also a health coach. She's written a cookbook, and she has her own podcast called The Sonya Looney Show. She interviews really interesting people on her podcast. You should definitely check it out. She also has an apparel line, Moxie and Grit, and she also has a mindset course. Sonya is really good at speaking about positive psychology, mental toughness, and mindfulness-based techniques to help people find more fulfillment in their everyday life. And she will also help you reframe your mindset when the going is getting really tough in the middle of a race. She's got a lot of tips and techniques for that. So I think you're going to take a lot from this episode. You can find Sonya on Instagram. She is Sonya Looney over there. All right. And if you enjoy this show, make sure you reach out to her. Let her know that you enjoyed hearing from her, and leave us a quick rating and review so other listeners can potentially find this show and enjoy what you are hopefully enjoying as well. Okay. Here's my conversation with Sonya. Okay, well, today on the podcast, we have Sonya Looney on the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to another podcaster. She has a microphone and headphones. She's all geared up and ready to go, guys.
That's right. We're all set here.
It's so fun to interview other podcasters because I'm always like, they're going to have a microphone. It's awesome. So we connected on Twitter when I was looking for plant-based, vegetarian, maybe not vegan, but plant-based cookbooks, and you sent me a PDF of your cookbook, which is really awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun to make that cookbook. It's a digital cookbook, and I just have all these recipes that I just regularly make, and I thought a lot of times people don't want to eat, quote, healthy because it's too much work. So I wanted to make sure that mine were super easy and tasty. And yeah, that's something that's important in our household for sure.
Yeah. Have you checked out the Oshi Glows cookbooks?
Yes. I wish that I was as talented as Angela, I think is her name,
Yes.
But her cookbooks and her app make regular appearances in our menu planning every single week.
I mean, it's just like, I love her recipes, but they are very detailed. Like it's never going to be just like a 20-minute dinner prep.
That's true. Although there are a few things in the app that are really easy and really quick, but you have to find them.
Okay, what are some of your favorites?
Well, there's one, I think she calls it energizing broccoli dal.
Okay.
And it's just like, it's like lentils, broccoli, coconut milk, a bunch of spices like cumin and curry powder and things like that. And it's awesome. And our son loves it too, which is pretty cool because he's only, he's 1.5 almost.
Do it now because, man, some of my kids, they started getting Cheerios when they were like, I don't know, 8 months. And that was their diet for the next 3 years. Because once I got to kid 3, I got lazy with trying to introduce new foods because I was just trying to survive. So
no kidding.
It's like, I feel like I don't know if I dropped the ball, but I mean, they're fine. They're healthy kids, but that's really good that he eats that.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I only have one right now, but I could just imagine, trying to do everything perfect with the first one. And then the second one, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. And then the third one, you're like, I'm done.
I mean, it is true. And I know that there are parents that are still going strong with those second, third, fourth kids. But when my third and fourth were born, I was in pure survival mode. And let me just say, I did cloth diapers with my first, and I made homemade baby food. And if anybody follows me on Instagram they know that I do not live that life anymore. But I tried, and I think at the time with my first son, I'm glad I did those things. It was fun for me to do with him, and his cloth diapers were real stinking cute, but I cannot imagine having the patience for a cloth diaper today.
No.
They're a lot of work, and they're honestly, no offense to you cloth diapers out there, they're really gross. Do you do them?
No. I had aspirations to do it. And then our son was born right at the beginning, literally the beginning of the pandemic, March 15th, 2020. And we were like, yeah, we're going to do these services where they come pick it up. And no, haven't done the cloth diapers.
No, just don't do them. Okay. So this is fun because even though this is a running podcast, we have a mountain biking world champion on the show. You said you're running a little bit now. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, and the funny thing that most people don't know is I actually found the keyhole to endurance sports and consequently to finding out who I was and what I wanted out of life through running. And I started running at the end of high school. It was the first thing that I ever did for me, and I was a hyperachiever in all these other areas. But this was something that I just wanted to do for myself. And I wanted to run a marathon. And that completely changed my perspective of what I was capable of and what I wanted out of my life. And it was because of running that I found mountain biking.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all. That's really exciting. Tell us about that. Who encouraged you to start running? Did you join a team? When did you run your first marathon?
No, I didn't join a team. It was just something I saw in women's health, or maybe I heard somebody talk about it in my class, but I didn't know anybody that was doing it. And I guess that's sort of just something I've always done is I just get interested in something and I want to do it. And I just started running, and I bought, the books on how to train for a marathon. And it was the Duke City Marathon in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because that's where I grew up. And I wasn't anything spectacular, but I ran my first marathon when I was 18, and I was doing all these different races, 10K races. And the UNM, University of New Mexico cross country coach actually invited me to come walk on their team, for the following year. But I ended up finding mountain biking that summer. So I went all in on mountain biking, and I kind of stopped the running gig, but it was something that I would do periodically for cross training over the years. And now there's just big challenges on the horizon that I'm really interested in doing because I've been racing mountain bikes for 17 years and I've done some really amazing adventures, and I'm so grateful for that. But I just want to do something that makes my palms sweaty. And some of these ultra running, trail races and things like that make my palms sweaty. So it's going to take some time to build up to that. But I run 3 to 4 days a week now.
Okay. I'm so curious. Do you have siblings?
I have a brother,
a
younger brother.
I'm just curious where the edge for endurance and testing your limits comes from. Is this something that your parents passed down to you? Are they adventurous?
No, I mean, they're adventurous, but nobody in my family anywhere is an endurance athlete. I just sort of came into my own and found it for myself. And I think that that's why it's important to surround yourself with people who are going to support you and who you look up to, because through, I started running, and then I was going to the gym and I saw other runners at the gym. So that's how I kind of started getting ingrained in that community. And then when I started mountain biking at my first race, I met, great people, and I rode for the UNM cycling team, and that also really helped me. And then I moved to Boulder, Colorado, because I said, this is where I need to be if I want to be an endurance athlete. And that really supported, who I wanted to be. And whenever everybody else around you has similar dreams, it doesn't make your dreams seem so far-fetched or even, quote, a stupid hobby, to quote other people who were, looking at what I wanted to achieve in my athletic career. And I just never expected myself to be where I am. I wanted to be a pro soccer player growing up, and like I wanted to be like Mia Hamm, and then I wanted to be a tennis player because that's what I was doing, as my sport in high school.
So did you just like bounce around growing up though? I'm at this place in my parenting where my kids are getting to the stage where I'm like, I want them to start trying different sports now. I was like so married to not over activity-ing, if that word works, the kids, mostly because I didn't want to serve as a taxi cab, right? Like I didn't want to constantly just be driving my 4-year-old to all these practices where he could just play in the front yard. But now my oldest is 9, and I want to give him the opportunity to see what he loves to do, right? So we're doing little things here and there. And I'm always curious to talk to people who end up being really adventurous and end up going all in on something, what their childhood was like what your parents did or what you did that could have contributed to these passions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great question and also a conundrum as a parent. My parents said, look, you get to pick one activity and do that. So I had to pick my one activity. But as I got older, running was something that I was doing, and I would just run to the gym. I'd run as a form of transportation, or I'd run before tennis practice. But I think that for me, the love of the mountains came because my family took me camping, from a young age. And that was something we always did as a family. And still, when I look back at my life and say, what are the most, the fondest trips and memories? It's camping trips. So I think that got me interested in wanting to do things that were in the outdoors. But I don't know, there's the family support question, and my family didn't support me at all to become a pro mountain biker or a runner. Like those weren't things that were, of value to them. And everybody, every parent is doing their best, and they did support me in lots of other great ways. But that didn't come from my family. That came from me and the people that I wanted to be around. So I think that people's kids and our kids, they'll find their own way, and we can do the best that we can to help, guide them. But they're going to end up sifting to the real interests are going to sift to the surface.
Yeah. I love that. Go back to the marathon really quick. What is that the only one you've done?
I did it twice, the Duke City one, but I did it year 1, and then year 2 was the craziest thing. I've always been really stubborn, and I pulled my hamstring. It was like the week before the marathon. Ugh. And my first marathon, I did like a 3:45, and the second marathon I wanted to do like a 3:20, and I was training really well and everything was going, well for that, but I pulled this muscle, and then I didn't know any better. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to do the marathon anyway. And it did not go well. I finished, but it was horrible. And it made me want to quit running basically. And that injury took years actually to heal itself. So I've done lots of stupid things, pushing through injuries and trying to know the difference. Like there are times where you can push through an injury, and knowing the difference is really hard.
Yeah. And really important, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do the 2 marathons and then you discover mountain biking. How did you discover it?
Actually, it wouldn't be what everybody thinks. I would go to spin class at the gym because I would get injured, and I had a stress fracture my senior year of high school, like all these things. So I would just be doing elliptical trainer and spin class. And then these guys at my work invited me to go mountain biking. I was a student intern in engineering, and these guys invited me, and I had never gone mountain bike. I mean, maybe I rode a mountain bike in middle school. I remember my dad and I went to Purgatory or Durango Mountain Resort, and we rented bikes, and we rode the ski lift up, and we walked our bikes down. So that was my experience mountain biking. But I just thought, yeah, I'll give it a try. And I got this old bike that was my brother's bike, probably from Walmart, out of the shed, and I took it mountain biking. And they challenged me in 2 weeks to do my first race. So I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm going to do it. And I did my first race. And the rest is history. I mean, I was like, this is an amazing sport, and I want more of this. And my first race wasn't what everybody would imagine. We always hear these stories that appear to be like, oh, instant talent and success. it's like my bike didn't work. I didn't know what I was doing. I was the last person to finish. Like everybody had gone home and everybody was waiting for me, or the race promoter was waiting for me to finish. And it was because I signed up. So at the time, you could actually just sign up for whatever category you wanted. So there's beginner, sport, expert, and pro. And you couldn't sign up for the pro without, having a license. But I decided I would sign up for the sport category because it was the New Mexico State Championship. And it was a longer distance than I had ever done, but no one was signed up. So I thought, well, I'll just sign up for this category so I can just win. And I finished and I was the sport state champion, but only because I was the only person in that category.
Like, were there males doing it and you were the only female?
Well, you only compete against, like, females only compete against females.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So there were guys there, but they were all long. Everybody was long gone by the time I finished.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so how far was that race? Like, what was the distance?
I don't remember. It was probably like 15 miles or something, like nothing crazy.
Oh, one, I love that you were just like, okay, yeah, let's just do it. Because I oftentimes do think some of the best things in life come from experiences like that. Like, I don't know much about it, but I'm just going to try it. And then you realize you love it. But when it's that hard and difficult, like, did you finish thinking, I want to try again? Or did you finish feeling discouraged because it was so difficult?
I finished thinking I'm going all in on this. I went to the bike shop. I spent all of my life savings on a bike, and I started racing every single weekend. I started racing the beginner category where I belonged.
Yeah. Okay, so when did you discover that you have some talent, but also your hard work and how driven you are is a massive component in this as well? When did you discover that you could compete on a world stage?
Any day now. No, I'm kidding. It was when I switched disciplines because I was trying to race cross country discipline, which is the 20 miles or less, hour and a half style of racing. And I was doing that and I was racing, I became a pro in 2 years by, going to races at the national level and upgrading. But I just was never at the very top of the heap as a pro mountain biker in cross country. And I'd tried for like 6 years and racing nationally and going all in. And I was always I was better than mid-pack, but I was nowhere near the front group. And I thought to myself, like, do I want to keep investing everything? Like I was using my credit card debt and student loans and just going all in to try and do the sport. And I had just sort of plateaued. So I didn't really know what to do next. And I didn't know if I should keep trying. But then someone suggested that I try an endurance race, like a 50-mile or 100-mile mountain bike race. And I thought, well, I love riding my bike. And one of the reasons I'm kind of not as excited about cross country racing is because you would go to these amazing places, but you would only ride this like short 5-mile loop and you'd ride it 3 times for the race or whatever the course would be. And then you wouldn't get to do much riding. And I just really wanted to explore and have these big adventures, and that curiosity about the mountains was always there. So I thought, well, I'll just give it a try and I'll see, how I do. And I ended up loving it. And I also ended up being really good at it, which I wasn't expecting.
I mean, you all listening, we have to like share with everybody the places around the world you have traveled to do these races. I mean, when I'm going to link your TED Talk about your Nepal race, but can you kind of give us a little synopsis of that? I started listening to it in the kitchen and my husband was making lunch and he was walking around and he was like, she went by herself? So tell me about that experience. I don't want to say I'm not a brave person, but I feel like I'm not brave enough to do those things. So talk to us about that.
I didn't really feel like I was going alone because I knew other people that were going to be at the race and I trusted the organization of the race. So, I wasn't just off on a plane to Nepal to have an unknown adventure. But yeah, like I decided, so I started doing these 100-milers and then I did a couple multi-day stage races, just one, I guess, in Colorado. And then I thought, well, I like this multi-day format where you're racing for, 7+ days in a row and you get to ride your bike a lot and you get to see lots of different trails. And this is real adventure. But what would happen if I left the country and started doing this around the world? And I was really inspired by, at the time he was a boyfriend, but and now, he's a friend, but he got into this race and I thought, wow, that'd be cool to go to Nepal. Like, I want to do that. So I managed to get myself to this race. And, endurance sports, it's hard to fund the experience, right? Like runners, cycling, whatever it is, it's not you're not getting rich doing it, and it's hard to go to some of these things. So I had to get creative as to how I was going to make this happen, because I was done with graduate school by then, but I was not, somebody that was really affluent and, heavily supported. So I thought, well, I love writing like magazine articles and things like that. So I'm just going to start pitching stories to magazines. And I just would do that. I'd say, hey, I'm going to write about this adventure and the experience that I had, and you can publish it in this magazine. And then I'd go to the race and I'd say, hey, I'm a journalist and I'm also a professional writer. I'm going to write a feature story. Can I have a free entry to your race? And then I would just have to come up with the plane ticket, and I'd be set. So I did that for a really long time to be able to go to these races.
Smart. That's so smart. Okay, so I want to hear a little bit about that race specifically. And you do need to go listen to her TED Talk. But I mean, the altitude, can you tell everybody a little bit about what that race entailed?
Yeah, so I did the race. It was in 2012 and then also in 2013, but it was a 10-day mountain bike stage race in the Himalaya across the Annapurna circuit in Nepal. So that meant that you started at one of the lower altitudes, like I don't know exactly what it was. And then over time, you would eventually top out at Thruong La Pass, which is at 17,769 feet. You'd have to hike your bike through the snow and figure out a way to strap your bike to your back. The ultimate adventure. And then the last day would be, descending further down with some flat riding. So I was definitely intimidated about the altitude, because even though I lived in Colorado at the time and I had, had adventures at 14,000 feet, you're in a whole different, place when you're going up to nearly 18,000 feet and you're in a third world country. And at the time, it wasn't very developed. So I think now there's a road where if something happened, a car could pick you up. But at that time, if something bad happened to you, you got sick or injured or whatever, the only way to get help is you'd have to go back by yourself or go back on a yak or something. There wasn't like race support. So I was afraid of something bad happening. When I think back, just telling the story, I'm like, wow, I was really brave.
You were very brave.
But it was never like, oh, I shouldn't go to this. But it was like, I'm kind of worried about something happening, but I just have to do everything that I can to prepare for this. And I have to trust that I'm going to be able to get myself through this race. And honestly, all of this confidence and this courage, it literally started because of the first marathon I ran.
Wow. What about the marathon made you feel that way? I feel like some people run their first marathon and they're like, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. I never want to do it again. And then we all sign up again eventually. But what was the moment for you that you felt that unlocking of the potential?
I think it's just proving to yourself that you can do hard things. And, the marathon was the first big hard thing that, it's like I was a good student and I was good in band and all these things. But I've actually been trying to do some research as to why endurance sports build confidence more than something like, being first chair in school and band, or like being a really top academic. And there's just something about it that I just proved to myself that I was capable of this. And then I just started building on that by taking on other challenges. And I know that anyone listening who's done anything that they're proud of, like the biggest challenges in your life that you accomplished, or maybe you didn't even quite accomplish it, it was just something that you worked towards. That's probably the most meaningful thing in your life. And whenever you take on something else that's hard, you might look at that and say, well, I was able to do X. Well, maybe I can do something else. So it's just all of this has been building on itself. And it's just an amazing example of self-efficacy and why it's so important to push yourself. Because even when you come up short, you still learn so much and you realize that, yeah, like this is what makes life worth living.
Wow, that's so good. Hey friends, a quick break here to let you know about trust and will. Okay, so we all know we need one, a will, that is, but most of us put off creating a trust or will because it sounds complex and expensive. But now it doesn't have to be, thanks to the online estate planning experts at Trust and Will. If you're a mom or a dad, we know you'd do anything to protect your family, but many people don't have a trust or a will in place. So make sure your loved ones are taken care of by creating an estate plan online with Trust and Will. I've checked out their website and it is super easy to use. They give you a quiz and it will help you feel at ease about all the things that you need to get in place. This isn't something I particularly love thinking about or talking about, but the fact that their website is so easy to personalize and use makes me feel at ease. So you guys can all gain a peace of mind at trustandwill.com/another and get 10% off plus free shipping of your customized legal documents. Don't wait, go right now. This is really important. Get 10% off plus free shipping at trustandwill.com/another. trustandwill.com/another. All right, back to the show. Okay, so is the Nepal race, like, what other races that are similar to that go up in the charts of like danger and you had to be really brave because, I don't know, you might die? Like, I know you've been to like 25 countries. So what are some of the other races like that, and like what countries that had a similar experience that you could share about?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's all the third world countries because that adds an extra layer of complication. But yeah, like going to the Sahara Desert and racing there was pretty interesting and really challenging. And actually, that race was chartered by a Spanish race production company. So almost nobody spoke English, and the briefing was in Spanish, which I don't really speak Spanish. So that was interesting. There's been some races. I pick races based on the exoticness and the challenge of it. Like, I don't want I'll do races, that are kind of normal that people do, but I really want races that are going to like get me way outside my comfort zone, get me way outside of what I've seen in my life, because those have really given me true perspective. And yeah, racing in like Sri Lanka or going to Haiti, which, that was like the very first mountain bike race ever in Haiti. And there's only 30 people that went, like going there. Going to Mongolia was probably the most dangerous of all the races I went to, because the race organization itself did a horrible job. So it was actually dangerous because of that. Like, if anything happened, anything went sideways, and things did go sideways, you're like, wow, like this could end badly for everybody.
Wow. Where along this journey? So you went pro in, was it 2007?
I think so. Or no, I think it was like 2005, 2006. I can't remember.
Okay, where along this journey did you meet your husband?
Yes, so I met my husband at a race in Vancouver, a mountain bike stage race called BC Bike Race in 2012.
Okay.
And that was kind of the beginnings of, I started stage racing. It was in 2009 or 2010. So this was one of the earlier races I had done. And I remember like literally like just trying to get to this race was such a challenge, because I was working in the bike industry for this company, but they wouldn't cover the cost of me getting to the race. And I had a work trip in Seattle. So I just found a way to get up to Vancouver for this race. I somehow was staying in a hotel that was like in a dangerous area, but it was the only hotel I could afford. But I just didn't even know that I was in danger. It's just so funny. And then I ended up taking a Greyhound bus after the race to get to Seattle so that I could go to work.
Oh my gosh. So is he a mountain biker too?
He is. So he was doing the race. At the time, so this race was crazy because the riding in British Columbia, which is actually now where I live, is like a different sport. It's incredibly steep and rocky, and you just would never think that anybody could ride anything here. So I was completely under-equipped with the bike that I brought. It was pouring rain, and in a lot of places they close the trails when it's raining because it damages the trail. So I'd never really ridden in these types of conditions. I was on the completely wrong bike, but we were both racing, and the races offer free camping. So I was like camping at the race in the rain, and I broke my first bone on the last day of the race. I broke my wrist, and all this stuff happened. But the cool thing about stage racing is that, especially races that aren't like 1,000 people, is that you end up spending time with kind of the same group of people. You end up racing around the same group of people. After the race, you get to share stories. Everybody might be going different speeds, but everybody has a story to tell when they get to the finish line, and everybody's there with the same values and the same reasons that they're taking on, or similar reasons they're taking on challenges like this. So I got to know my husband, Matt, just by, seeing him at the dinner table and just hanging out. So that was unexpected and pretty cool.
Okay, I'm so curious. Like the way you explain this, I'm like, this sounds like a nightmare. Like staying at a scary hotel, being raining on my mountain bike in the middle of the woods. Granted, I'm not a mountain biker and I'm not a camper, but were there moments where where you wondered like, what am I even doing here right now?
Oh yeah, there's lots of times where I think this sucks. Like a lot of the different events I've done, but it's a temporary feeling. And it's like you said, somebody who's done a marathon, that they might finish and be like, oh my God, that was horrible. But then the next day they're like, when's the next one?
Yeah.
It's just like that type 2 fun. It's just, I don't know. I think it's so hard sometimes that the joy that you experience on the other end of the spectrum is so elating. And it makes you feel so alive in ways that you wouldn't feel alive in your daily life. Although as a new parent, I have to say there are lots of highs and lows.
I appreciate that because it's interesting because I'm at a phase of my parenting where I'm out of the baby stage. My kids are 3, 4, 6, and 9. And so it's less tiring for those physical reasons, you know? Mm-hmm. And we, whatever, people get up sometimes in the night, but it's just way different than a baby getting up in the middle of the night. But just the shifting of emotional needs and also physical needs in regards to people need to be taken to places more and things like that. I'm like, was it easier to train when I had toddlers, because there's just so many other directions now. But I do think that it's important to acknowledge that like physical and emotional exhaustion that comes with being a parent because you really can't compare it to anything else.
No, you can't. I mean, I would say that the fatigue of pregnancy is like jet lag after doing a 7-day race that just never goes away.
Yeah. It's wild. And every time I'm pregnant and I feel that way, I'm like, am I just being lazy? Like, do I feel this bad? And then you look back and you're like, no, that was so hard.
Yeah, I think that especially as athletes, when you get pregnant, you're used to just pushing through whenever you're tired. But there's certain situations where you shouldn't just push through if you're tired, and not beating yourself up in the process and not losing yourself in the process, especially if your identity is like, yeah, like I'm somebody who goes out and does, big adventures, and you might not be able to do that. And you might not be able to do that after your kids come either because you don't want to, because of your shifted priorities, or maybe you don't have the support to do that.
I'm curious, as someone who is so knee deep in big time adventures, did you struggle with that when you were pregnant?
Initially, I would say it was hard, just because I wasn't used to feeling chronically bad on my bike.
Yeah.
And that was hard. But once I let go, because you always hear control the controllables, but really there's a letting go portion of that. And once I learned to let go of, okay, I don't need to be training these hours. I need to be taking care of myself, whatever that looks like, and being healthy. And then I think a lot of people, especially like endurance athletes, they look at Strava and they look at the number of hours, and that becomes like how worthy they are and how good their training was. But that's not necessarily the case. Like you can do a lot in less than 10 hours a week, and even in 5 to 7 hours a week. There's a lot that you can do with that. And, accepting that, hey, like this isn't my worth as an athlete is so important and so hard to do.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the World Championships race, and then we're going to shift to mindset, because I definitely want to, not that you haven't been giving us like all these great little pieces here and there already, but talk to us about the 2015 24-hour racing World Championship that you were the champion of. What does that race look like?
Yeah. Well, it's actually pretty funny or ironic. So I've done a lot of 24-hour racing. And in fact, I forgot how many I had done, just because it was something that I would just sprinkle in along the way throughout, through years. So I had done 4-person race where you trade off, everyone does one lap and just you trade over the course of 24 hours. Oh, so I should say, for people who don't know what 24-hour racing is, it's one lap, and it's whoever rides the most laps in 24 hours wins.
How long is a lap?
Usually between an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay. Is it like on a cross-country type mountain biking course?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, and so if you're doing like a 4-person or a 5-person team, like you just every 4 to 5 to 6 hours, depending on the course in your team, you ride a lap and you ride as hard as you can. And then there's like 2-person format where if you want to win, you have to trade every lap, which is, I think, is harder than going solo because you have to ride hard every other hour, and you never really get to rest, and your legs feel awful when you get started. So that's probably the hardest. And then there's solo, where you just ride you ride for 24 hours straight, and things like sitting down in between laps is a bad idea. You have to have your lights dialed, your nutrition dialed. This sounds kind of crazy, but some people actually temporarily go blind if they try to do a 24-hour solo race.
Oh my gosh.
So for obvious, like, I had never done one before. I had done, like, there's this trail called a race called the Vapor Trail 125 in Colorado, where you start at 10 o'clock at night in Salida, and it's a 125-mile mountain bike loop, like one loop with like 22,000 feet of climbing. So I had done that, but I had never done a solo, and it was something that I really wanted to check off my list. It was a solo 24, not something I was excited about, but something to check off. So it was like 6 weeks before the race. I didn't even know it was happening, but a friend of mine was like, "Hey, did you know that 24-hour Worlds are in California this year?" And I was like, "No, I didn't. Well, maybe I should just give it a try." So my husband was my only support person. And I just talked to some of the people who had great success racing solo and asked them what they did. And I knew I had experience, riding my bike all night. I knew I had experience in 24-hour racing. So I just came up with a race plan, and I hoped that it would work out. And I was conservative with my pacing, and yeah, I ended up winning the race. And, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just there to, like, hopefully check this 24-hour solo off and maybe do well. But yeah, there was like the 24-hour adventure, or the adventure racing world champion was there, and like some of these other people who were really experienced. So it was hard because I had to really be focused on riding my own race. And I think a much more important, broader lesson of that is, like, it's so easy to be focused on what everybody else is doing, at what pace people are living their lives, or what their achievements are. And really, you're going to get the most out of yourself if you try not to pay attention to what everybody else is doing and just focus on riding your own race or living your own life, because you're going to get the best out of yourself by doing that. And if I had tried to look at what everybody else was doing and go the same speed as everybody else or whatever, like, I might not have even finished the race.
Man, that's so true. That's one thing. This is such a side note of that. Is like, that's one thing that sucks about social media is anybody gets drawn into that. Seeing what other anybody gets, and if you say you don't, you're lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I just think that even if people try to be super real and organic on social media, and I feel that I am that way, with my own stuff, you still don't see everything. Like, nobody sees me fighting with my husband. Like, everybody fights at some point and things like that. Nobody sees those things. And so no matter how real you try to be or just portray yourself, like, I'm not going to be fake, it's never the whole picture.
Yeah, and also you can't control how people interpret what you're putting out there. Like, you might be as genuine and authentic as possible, which I think many of us strive to do, but if somebody is feeling, less than, or they're feeling insecure, like, that post could trigger them, and you never would have wanted that to happen. So
totally.
Yeah, or you yourself could be triggered by somebody that you really like a friend, and they're doing something, and you could feel, I think it's just having the awareness around all the feelings. Like, I'm feeling jealous right now, or I'm feeling, anger. I'm feeling like I'm better than somebody right now. And realizing, like, hey, like, this is just an emotion. This doesn't mean that this is, like, defining my life or what I should do next.
So good. Okay. How many laps did you get in? Like, do you know how many miles-ish you did in that 24-hour period?
I don't remember the miles, but I remember that I did, like, about 30,000 feet of climbing. So, did you stop and sleep at all? I don't know if, when you're a world champion, you probably don't do that. No, I stopped. This is probably horrible for my kidneys, but I stopped once to go to the bathroom, and I remember it was horrible. Like, I got off my bike, and my feet hurt so bad, and my back was screaming at me, and it was just because I said, I'm not getting off my bike unless I have to go to the bathroom, and that's the only reason I'm stepping off my bike. So yeah, there was no sleeping. I think I was stopped for a total of 7 minutes. It was hard. It was, I mean, the worst part was actually when you finish, because you're kind of in this, like, trance and in this zone. But I remember afterwards, like, we were staying in a hotel that had a handicap bathroom, and I needed to hold on to the sides, the little handles, because my back was so screwed up I couldn't stand or sit. And to get in the car after the race, I literally had to stick my head in the car and just fall straight in. So yeah. And then, when you become 24-hour world champion, well, now you get invited to defend your title. So the next year was in New Zealand, and I honestly didn't really want to defend my title. I didn't really like 24-hour racing, and I was like, God, now I got to go to this race. And then I ended up, not on purpose, but I ended up crashing and getting a concussion about, 5 days before the race. So I made the decision to not race, because you're racing a 24-hour mountain bike race with a concussion's obviously bad idea. But I was kind of bummed. And then my husband was like, you know what? Like, you don't actually like this style of racing, and you probably would have won again. And then you would have been on this treadmill of having to race 24-hour race solos.
What's your favorite distance and type of event?
I love, for single day, I love 100-mile mountain bike races. And then my favorite is like 7-day mountain bike stage races, especially the ones that are longer, because there's different styles. There's like, cross country length, like 2.5 to 3 hours a day. But then there's ones that are like, one day might be 2 hours, one day might be 8 hours. And the ones that have, you're accumulating 30 to 35 hours of racing over the course of a week, I love those because they're the hardest. Anything can happen. It requires having a lot of different skills in your toolbox. And I feel like it's a true test of endurance, whereas the shorter ones may not necessarily be the case.
If you were a track athlete, you would for sure be a steeplechaser. Just throwing some barriers in my way.
Oh my gosh. I can't jump, and I would definitely fall on my face. I fall on my face trail running, actually. It happens a lot.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we need to get into the mindset thing a little bit. And I know I already said that you've been giving us little pieces here and there just throughout this conversation, but I know that's one of the things that you've done a lot of research on, and you have a course on it. And obviously, from doing all these like very intense events, this is something that you've worked on, and you have a really you've like crafted this like really great way to handle mindset. Anytime you're in a marathon, anytime you're in a mountain bike race, there will be dark moments. We've all had them. So maybe let's start there. Let's start at a dark moment. Give us some steps.
Yeah, so number one, expect the dark moment to come. I think a lot of times we think, oh, everything's going to be fine, or it's not going to happen to me. And even the most optimistic, happiest, highest performing people, maybe especially those people, have dark moments. So number one, accepting that it's going to be there. Number two, like, it's not going to define you. It's just something that's happening, like the weather. So knowing that you're not going to stay there and that it's not going to be permanent is so important. And also knowing that, there are certain circumstances where you shouldn't just keep pushing through, especially in the cases of injury or depression, or things like that. You shouldn't just push through. But if you don't have any of that going on, like, knowing that it's like peaks and valleys, it's going to happen, but it's going to get better. So you have to have that optimistic perspective, knowing it's going to get better. And the only way to do that is by practicing it. So when you have a dark moment and you quit, you're training yourself that you can't do it and that you're going to just quit every single time. But if you look back and find a time, or think of a time where you had a dark moment and you got past it, then maybe you'll realize that, yeah, I can get past this. And even looking for opportunity in those challenges, like, hey, like, how can I still find joy if things aren't going my way, or if I'm cramping, or if I feel like if I'm vomiting, like how can I still find joy in this? And it might seem crazy, but it's a skill. And if you keep working at it in your training, you can look at it in your life, like any type of challenge you're having, like, where can I find the opportunity to be better here?
Did you ever have a race or moment where you did give in and you did quit, and what did you learn from that?
I've never quit a race just because it wasn't going well. Like, the races that I've quit, there was actually something very physically wrong with me. Like, I have to get an IV or whatever. But there were races I didn't quit, but I wanted to quit. And especially in my early career as a pro cyclist, like, I just had high expectations of myself, and I was finishing near the back. It was my first year as a pro, and that's to be expected, but I wasn't used to not being good at something. And at the time, I was a perfectionist, and I didn't accept myself if I wasn't at the very top. So that was really challenging. And I would like fantasize about stabbing holes in my tires or like getting lost and not being able to finish. But asking yourself why. And it was because I was so afraid of what other people would think about me. And I was so afraid that that would mean that I wasn't lovable if I wasn't an achiever. And that was a huge realization. And honestly, it was from going to yoga and having these really great yoga instructors that were more on the spiritual level that really helped me embrace that. And it's something that I still have to work on because I still deep down think that if I am achieving more, people are going to love me more. And I every single day have to remind myself like that's not the case. I'm really fortunate that my husband, like he'll even say to me, because he knows I need to hear it, like, I don't care what you're going to achieve. I love you no matter what. And yeah, it's a tough place. And I think a lot of people can relate with that, but most people wouldn't want to admit that out loud to themselves because it's a hard thing to accept.
Yeah, I think it's brave, I'm using that word again, to admit that because I do think most of us feel that way. I mean, even think about my work on this podcast or if I run a marathon PR. As much as you want it to be self-motivated, other people's accolades feel really good.
Yeah,
It's
like
human.
getting recognition because we're pack animals. Like we're not designed to be these isolated creatures, and we want to fit in, and we want people to like us. And I think that's okay. But where it gets not okay is when you start defining your entire self-worth or the success of what you're doing based on what somebody else thinks.
Yeah, you can't control that.
No.
Hey friends, a quick break here to thank Beam for supporting this episode of the podcast. If you're looking for a great night's sleep, check out their Dream Blend. It's a delicious blend of sleep-enhancing vitamins, minerals, nano hemp, and more. I drink it every night. It's like this delicious take on hot chocolate, helps me calm down, and it's a great nightly routine. They also have an amazing hydration line. I personally love the Elevate Recovery Mix the best. It's a hydrating electrolyte powder formulated with non-GMO collagen peptides, BCAA for supportive joint and muscle health, and it has a rejuvenating fresh lemon flavor. I have looked for a great electrolyte mix for years, and I have found Beam, and it is my favorite I've tried over my years and years and years of running. You can go to beamtlc.com and use the code ANOTHER for 15% off your order. That's beamtlc.com. Use the code ANOTHER for 15% off your order. All right, back to the show. Oh my gosh, I loved this Instagram post you recently did, and you said, "This is what I came here for." Like, I don't know if it was like right before a big workout or something like that. Like you started the workout and you start feeling the hurt and that's what you say to yourself. I love the idea of that. I love the idea of being at mile 22 of a marathon when you are like in the pain cave and just saying to yourself, this is what I came here for.
Yeah, I think it helps distance yourself from the pain or the struggle that you're feeling because it reminds you like, yeah, this is what I signed up for. But a lot of times you forget, like, I actually didn't just sign up for the all the rosy things. I signed up for the pain. I signed up for the challenge. And without that, there might not be as much meaning in this.
Yeah, that's so, so good. Let's talk about finding fulfillment in sport and everyday life when there are days when it feels mundane and you wake up and you're like, I know my day is going to be better if I go run for an hour or whatever the activity is, but you are just not motivated.
Oh my gosh, I can relate with this so much right now. I started talking about this a lot when I was pregnant because, I was really committed to not overdoing it. I don't want people to feel like, yeah, I was overdoing it and everybody's body is different and you have to, do what works best for you. But I didn't want to sell myself short. And so many times we just don't feel like getting started. And it's like, just getting dressed feels so hard. The idea of it feels so hard. And so I lowered the barrier of entry so low that all I had to do was show up. And that became my mantra. And it's a mantra that I continue to carry with me. In fact, I made a little sticker for my bike that says show up because that's the most important thing in life is to show up for yourself. So I would commit to going out and riding my bike for 5 minutes. The same goes for running. If I don't feel like going out for a run, commit to 5 minutes. And if you want to quit after 5 minutes, go home. because that probably means that you shouldn't be out there. You need a rest day. But a lot of times it's our mind telling us, making up every excuse not to get started, and you become your own worst enemy. So if you could just get started, if you're a writer, just start typing something. If you're a runner, just start moving your feet, just start moving your body, because your motivation will follow that action. And it's so hard to just wait to get motivated to get started. Oftentimes you need to take action in order to get motivated. Now, I mean, I have a 1.5-year-old. We don't have any childcare. It is freaking hard some days. And I don't want to get out there, but just getting started is important. And then trying not to judge yourself, because all of us are in different seasons of our lives. We're still, struggling with this global pandemic. There's a lot of inputs in our lives, and expecting yourself to be where you were at your very, very best at every single time you go out for an activity is an unrealistic expectation. So being able to meet yourself with compassion and say, hey, I'm doing this because this is important for me, not because I have to be at my very best every single day, is another important place to come from.
Yeah. We have moved recently from Indiana to North Carolina, and we moved late July, and I told myself throughout that process, I knew life was going to feel crazy. They say that moving's like one of the most stressful things you can do. You just did it too, right?
Yeah, just 2 months ago.
Yeah, so you're like basically in the same boat. So I committed to myself that on most days, so probably 6 days a week, I'm exercising for 30 minutes. That is my commitment. And if it goes further than that, awesome. But I'm just moving my body for 30 minutes almost every single day. And it's huge. And for someone who's run 17 marathons, or however many marathons I've run, that's not that much activity, right? But I just knew for my mental health, if I committed to anything more, it would stress me out. And if I committed to less, it would stress me out, because I'm happier when I move my body. So I do think it's so important to adjust those based on what's happening in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I just think it's so common to look back at your best and always expect people think that they should be there, or that, ideally you could get back there, but maybe you can't. Maybe you just can't do the same things you were doing in your whatever age you were, because you have different responsibilities and different inputs, and trying not to judge yourself based on that is so important.
And accepting if that's not what your heart wants to do, you don't have to do it.
Yeah, you don't have to do that anymore if you don't want to.
Which I think people have a really hard time accepting. I mean, I have that. I'm going through that right now. I'm only 37. We'll be 38 soon. But do I want to run fast marathons anymore? I know I physically can, but do I want to do that? I don't know. I'm grappling with that right now. I have plenty of time to still do that, but I just don't know if I want to. So I'm accepting where I'm at right now and just continuing this love for moving my body.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that is a question that a lot of people grapple with, because it takes a lot of commitment to be at your fastest. There's a lot of things that I don't want to say have to give up, but you have to prioritize in a different way. And maybe you don't want to prioritize that way forever. And then you wonder well, what does that mean about me? Or what does that mean about my identity if I'm not this person who's running really fast marathons anymore? And yeah, I think talking about it is so helpful, because you're definitely not alone.
Well, and it's hard too, because I think when you talk about the age thing, it's okay, physically I know I can still do that. But if I'm giving it up, am I entering a different phase in life? And that's just a hard thing to do in general. It's like when your kids move out of the house, or, when you hit 40 or when you hit 50 or whatever it is, those monumental life points, they're difficult.
Yeah, big pivots are really hard, or some athletes, when they retire from sport, it's really, really hard, because you've dedicated so much time, and you know that you can keep going, physically, like you said, but mentally and emotionally, you're maybe I don't want to do this anymore. And is that okay?
And it is okay. And just because the other person that might have the same number of kids as you and might be the same age as you is still doing it, doesn't mean you have to. And I think that, we talked about that with social media earlier. I do think that can positively or negatively affect those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, and I think understanding the reason why you want to do it and being honest with yourself as to like why do I want to do this, or why was I doing this, and like the purpose behind it, I think is the most important part, because you might be doing it for all the wrong reasons and then you're feeling dissatisfied by it. And when you're the work is hard, but if you're doing the work for the wrong reasons, it's not going to be very fulfilling in the end.
Man, it is hard to beat the satisfaction, though, of a long run with some good marathon pace miles in it. So I'm like, not totally talking myself out of it yet. Like those endorphins, that dopamine hit, whatever it is, like that is real.
Yeah, and I also think, burnout is a big thing that is affecting lots of people. And like if you're losing motivation for something that you used to love, you might just be burnt out. Like there's lots of different inputs in life, like we were just talking about. And yeah, maybe you just need a break.
Yeah, when in 2013, I ran a marathon PR, and then I was burnt out. Like I was like, I ran 3 marathons in 8 months and I am burnt out. And I went and did a half Ironman. And like, I think that was a really good decision in my life at that point. And I think that when we're feeling those feelings for our particular sport or whatever it is we're really interested in, we pivot and we put energy into something else. And maybe running will still be there, but we can sprinkle it in different ways. And maybe we'll come back to it going all in. But I do think focusing your like energy and talents and time into something else can be a really refreshing thing to do.
Yeah, that's actually why I started trail running more regularly. Like it's something I'm going to continue doing, and not just in the off season, because I've been racing for 17 years. I've been riding my bike, 6 days a week for 17 years. And I honestly needed a break. Like it was just getting to the point where it was like hard, and hormonally I just wasn't feeling good for a long time after I had my son. Like the first few months went great and my training was great, but then just I was still breastfeeding, and I think that was messing me up a bit just emotionally, and I just felt terrible on my bike all the time. And it was frustrating. So I actually wanted to quit, and I thought, I'm not going to quit, but I'm going to pick up something else to distract myself. And it's been great, because number one, I realized I actually really like trail running, and I also have a long ways to go to get better at it, which is fun. And also like, dang, I really love riding my bike. Like I love my bike more than riding my mountain bike more than anything. And that helped remind me of that too.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. I'm curious, what are the running challenges that you want to take on?
Well, the first one is a 50K race in Squamish called the Squamish 50. And I discovered it a few years ago because I was out riding my bike and I was on the course and I saw people running. I was like, people can run on this? This is crazy. And now that I've been running for 8 months, I can see myself doing that. Someday I would actually like to run a 100-mile trail race, just because I want to have that experience of like, holy crap, like this is crazy.
You did a Leadville mountain bike race, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, that was another bad decision. It was actually right after I did that BC bike race in 2012 where I broke my wrist. And I did level 100 and my wrist was in a cast, which is so dumb. So don't ever do that, everybody.
I can't imagine.
But I don't know. I was just committed to doing it and I did the race. It was a bad idea.
She loves the sport.
I didn't hurt my wrist worse, so that was good. But yeah, maybe someday. But I don't know. I don't really like Leadville 100 because it's a out and back dirt road race, which is not really my thing.
Well, I was going to say, would you run Leadville 100?
I would consider running Leadville 100. This is a really crazy thing to say, and I probably have no idea even what I'd be getting myself into, or even if I could get in ever. But my family loves camping outside Silverton, and I've been camping there my whole life. And I remember seeing the Hard Rock 100 when I was a runner, like way back when, thinking to myself, I want to do that someday. So maybe someday I'll do the Hard Rock 100.
Oh, that's so cool. Tell us your best camping tips, because I would like to be a camper with my kids, but in like adventure like that. When you talked about your parents, instilling that love for camping and being in the mountains, I'm like, oh, I want to do that for my kids, but I do not like camping.
I am probably not a good person to ask for advice with kids, because we've taken one camping trip with our son and I was like, this is not fun.
But just camping in general, with or without the sleep thing for me, because I'm at the point where I need like 5 pillows around me to sleep good, and like I need the sound machine. The temperature has to be perfect. I am like a sleep snob. So kids are no. I mean, my kids would be fine at this point. You know, my youngest is 3. They would all just pass out at the end of the day because they'd be so tired. But yeah, like just in general, give us some camping tips.
I'd say pick somewhere with an awesome view that you really want to have adventures as a base camp. I mean, I don't know if I have great tips. Like, make food that you really like and make it a fun experience where everybody's included. Hang out at camp. Like, I like the feeling of just sitting in the forest and listening and, you know, that kind of thing. Go with friends because that also makes it more fun. But I don't really have good tips about camping with kids, especially little ones, because he's like, my son was like eating dirt and like running off in every direction and not taking naps. I was like, this is really hard.
He's at a really hard age to do stuff like that. I am telling you what, once they're 3 and up, everything's a lot easier. And our youngest, we started phasing him into that when he was way younger than the others. But it gets so much easier. You're going to have so much fun camping with him when he gets older.
Yeah, I'd say maybe for camping, like embracing the simplicity, because when you get home, all the things that were uncomfortable, like you're not sleeping well, like your thermarest is deflating and it's hard to wash dishes and you got to go in the forest to go to the bathroom. It's like, it just makes it so much better when you get home because you're like, dang, like I have it really good at home.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. That's kind of how I felt after we stayed at the Super 8 on the way to move here. We were in some podunk town and we had our dog with us, and that was the only hotel that would take us with our dog. And I mean, maybe when I was a kid we stayed places like that, but I haven't stayed at a Super 8 in a long time, and it was not comfortable, and I did not want to be there. And so I felt very grateful to be in our new house when we got here. Clearly not a camper.
No, you never know.
Okay, so I wanted to get into plant-based stuff, plant-based nutrition and things like that, but we have run out of time, so I think we should do it in another episode.
Okay, that sounds great.
Is that good?
Yeah, there's a good book that just came out called The Plant-Based Athlete by Robert Cheek and Matt Frazier, and it features like 25 plant-based athletes from all different sports with everything under the sun that you could possibly imagine. So if people are interested in plant-based, I'm actually in the book, which is kind of cool. But the book itself is amazing and a huge resource for plant-based athletes. So that could be a little teaser. I
actually bought that book.
Oh, cool.
I have not read it yet, but I keep wanting to crack it open in my like list of all the books. I like walk around my house with like piles of books. Like I'm actually going to read all of them. I'll like move to the living room with all 5 books that I want to be reading, and I'll read like 5 pages in 3 of them. Anyway, that book was making the rounds around my house with me for a while there. And then I gave up because I was into the other books more. So I need to get back into it.
Yeah, I love audiobooks. I listen to them on 1.5 speed, and I listen to them on my bike rides, and it's just awesome. But then I end up buying the book if I really liked it. So I have like a pile of books that I'm going to reread, or I like have a book on my phone and I'll like read it for a couple minutes right before bed. It's kind of the extent of it.
Yeah, I love reading, and the audiobook what is it? The audiobook. Here, we'll do end of podcast now, but I'll just tell everybody the audiobook that I'm reading right now is called The Addiction Inoculation: Raising Healthy Kids in a Culture of Dependence. Kind of deep.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm going to see if I can book the author for my parenting podcast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get into like plant-based nutrition and fueling as an athlete in another episode with Sonya. But Sonya, what is something professionally or personally that you would like to do that you haven't done yet?
I'd say, like a 100-mile trail running race.
Okay, we'll be watching for when that happens, but don't rush it.
And I'd like to write a book. I've started and stopped many times. When it's the right time, I know it'll come out.
On mindset?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Sonya does have a course on mindset on her website. So if you're interested in learning more from her, you can find that. Is it sonyalooney.com?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who is someone fun, motivating, or inspiring you would like to have coffee, tea, or a cocktail with?
Oh my gosh, there's so many people. I guess right now I'd have to say my running coach, David Roach. I've
Oh,
actually I love their like he and Megan's podcast and his articles, and he's my coach, but I've still never met him in person, so I think that'd be just super fun.
I love them. I mean, everybody who talks to them loves them, but like they are so great.
And it's so funny.
So, yeah, so great, so funny, and just genuine. And if you are looking for some positivity in your life, definitely, if you're not, people aren't following them, go follow them. What is the best, most recent book you've read?
I would say two books: The Craving Mind, or no, Unwinding Anxiety by Jed Brewer. He's written both of those books. It's just a really great book. And then a book called Chatter by Ethan Kross, and it's about the science of self-talk.
Ooh, okay. What is your last message to leave with the audience?
So many that I could leave. I would say be kind to yourself and go big.
I love it. Thank you, Sonya.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Sonya, for coming on the podcast. You all can follow Sonya on Instagram. She is Sonya Looney over there. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Lindsay Hines 626. If you're local to the Indianapolis area, make sure you check out the Junior League of Indianapolis's 5K coming up on October 3rd. You can go to jlindy.org and use the code another5 for $5 off your registration. All right, thanks so much for being here today, and we will see you next week on the podcast. Have a great Friday, a wonderful rest of your weekend, and as always, we'll see you next Friday.